Welcome to Three Devs and a Maybe, the podcast series for beginner web developers and general web enthusiasts. Now, introducing your show hosts, Michael Budd, Fraser Hart, Lewis Caines, and Ed Mann.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Three Devs and a Maybe. My name's Ed Mann, and today is a two-man pod with my good friend Michael Budd. How are we doing, Mickey?
I'm good. I've never been called your good friend before.
My acquaintance, my
enemy,
my rival enemy.
Yes,
they say you keep
better.
your enemies closer than your friends, don't they?
That's true.
That's why I do a podcast with you. So just in case.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah.
I don't know whether that is a compliment or not, but yeah,
I'm
thanks,
taking
man.
it.
That's all right. Yeah. Oh dear. Yeah, it's been a couple of weeks actually since we've last released one of these days, and a lot has happened. A lot of stuff outside of the world of tech for us. But yeah, I mean, like, how are things going, Mixter?
I'm sort of like nearing the end of this big project that I'm working on, but
This is the analytical one, yeah?
Yeah, and I would say it's the most. I find with most projects, the last bit is the really stressful bit.
Like a marathon run, you know. The last bit is going to be the bit that's just going to make you, hit the wall.
It really is actually, and I have to say, like, the client I'm working for is absolutely brilliant, and he just wants like an MVP released basically, which is really cool. But defining the boundaries of what an MVP is really hard, and there's always going to be some functionality that doesn't go live that you'd really like to go live on that first release. So that's quite difficult. But how are you divvying that up? Are you like, do you have like a kind of weight system of like saying, all right, look, this is how much time that's going to take, and do you want that over that? And like giving them compromises like, right, you can have that, but you couldn't have that if you have that, and all those discussions. I think usually I would do, but like I said, this client is so good. He's like, well, you can get done, and then we'll release it. But there's like core functionality that has to be there, and with this product, obviously, for example, I mean, the main ability is to like, search through loads of records of data through traffic that's been on your site, and lots of things like find results where the first page you landed on was this, or when the last page was this. So all that kind of stuff has to be there, obviously, because if that's not working, then people just aren't going to use the product. So then you could have all the nice extra bells and whistles, but it's never going to be seen if you don't get the bread and butter bits right. So yeah, I mean, we kind of agreed on that, and it's been really nice having that freedom. The clients just said, well, look, the product has to do this. How you go about it, it's up to you. So he's really left me in charge of everything.
That's really cool. Like giving you that kind of confidence, like go and do what you feel is right. That's a nice thing. I mean, obviously, because I suppose then that the core functionality is the analytical, is logging the data. So getting it into at least a format that you can store. And then actually what you're saying after the fact, I mean, I know you want to be able to run some of these queries on it probably from day one, but a lot of that can probably be done after the fact, actually the analytical side of it. It's mainly can we get the data in that we want from these users? Yeah, and
that's exactly it. And the really scary thing is, I mean, the market that the client is in is very, very competitive, and their competitors would not be afraid to attack it. So, the security, I really, still need to look at like the API throttling side of things. I've made quite a few changes this week. So it now has like a backup. So if the system can't call an API and the API is not responding, then it falls back to another one. So it's got quite a nice graceful degradation there. And,
there's always going to be something you don't think of, though.
Of course,
I think that's it. I think you can try your best, and you have to battle test. I think the idea is to give yourself like escape hatches in some regard, to being like, all right, I can handle that. If it comes to it, there's a couple of places I can do certain things with. Building it in a certain way that it does allow some flexibility, but not ultimate flexibility where you've just got a design that's so abstract that you can't, that's insane and so complex. And I think that is finding that balance is hard. Actually, speaking about hacking and stuff, completely on a tangent, but have you watched a TV show called Mr. Robot? I'm about a year past
I keep meaning to watch it. It's on Prime, isn't it?
Watch it. It is good. You will like it. You will like it. That the first thing they mention is the Tor proxy and the onion routing. in a TV show that is released, to the world. It's quite an amazing thing. You're like, oh my God, this is so geeky. And I've even convinced Amy into getting into it. So it's one of those, I definitely recommend it, about hacking and things like that. Very interesting.
Okay. Yeah, I might watch that tonight then.
Obviously, it's one of those things, like, I remember Big Bang Theory at the first, like at the beginning, it was quite cool. It was like, oh yeah, and that's like the guys, obviously like Sheldon was like spending his Friday evening formatting his hard drive and installing a new Linux distribution. And I was like, that's pretty much amazing. Yeah. I've never done that. Of course not. I'm not that sad. Yeah, I am. I would do that. But it kind of, but once it gets more appeal, it obviously has to get more generic because people don't understand the tech side. But this, especially like the first couple of episodes, have definitely remained quite geeky, which is what I really like.
Okay, I'll check that out. One thing I was going to ask you actually was one of the things I'm having to sort out now is really the actual sort of database hosting. I've just moved over to RDS on your recommendation, and really happy with that. But the only sort of issue I would say is the pricing transparency. It's not great. I mean, they do say, this is the cost per hour, etc. But it's really hard to kind of calculate what that's going to work out as.
I think that's the beauty and the curse of these kind of passes and these these SaaSes, really, is that I mean, I say go RDS because I suppose what you could do, is you could set up your own server, have your own dedicated box or your own virtual VPS that has Postgres on it, or the database, system of choice at that time you want, and then you need to set up remote, you'll do your own mirroring and things like that, and you're definitely going to be cheaper. It will probably definitely be cheaper because you are then dealing and handling that. You need to deal with updates. You need to deal with the fact of, does it actually work? Will, if I do fall over, will it actually go and make that the master, switch the masters and things, all these complex things. And if you go with something like RDS, you essentially, you abstract that away. You've now
take away the headache.
That's it. Yeah. They deal with it. You can easily spin up new boxes. You can say, I want a replica. I want it to be this much replica and things like that. And also the type of database you use. I don't know how abstract and how much RDS is kind of probably specific to the data store you use. If in a relational database, whether how easy it is to switch between them. But you're not really. If you're going to want to be a Postgres guy, you're a Postgres guy. You've got MySQL. You've also got their own one, haven't you? And I can't remember what it is. Aurora, I think it is, or something.
Yeah, it's like a spin on MySQL.
Yeah, and that scares me. That one does, because I feel to myself that you want a local dev environment. Like, you should be able to set that up external, like having this kind of tie to a platform or to, like, say, Amazon. It's great. It's great in some regard because you get all the cool stuff. You get, we get Lambdas, we get all these new services that they provide you. But now you're tied in. You are tied into their product. If they change it, you have to change. You can't break out and use that code again somewhere else. It's not agnostic to a certain service. Obviously things like Docker containers are in some regard, and that's where, it's nice using those kind of things because, or, on a higher level, just as a virtual machine, because what you can then do is just be like, well, I know I can install what I need to install on this VPS, and they just provide me with the box, essentially, which is easy enough to move around. But actually using a service, which are so powerful and so tempting, but you do then you are tied in. You are then, whatever Amazon says, the price increases and stuff like that. With RDS, you're not, especially if you're using something like Postgres, you're not tied in to an extent because you're only using their service, which provides the extra reliability stuff on top of it for the abstracting away that. You're still using Postgres. You can still move it over to your own instance of Postgres.
Yeah, from my best estimates, I think I'm going to be spending about £1,000 a month on it, which is a bit scary. But yeah, just the nature of this product and the amount of space I'm going to need is crazy. So,
have you thought about? I suppose. So, how is it priced up? Is it priced up on activity use or actual data stored?
Well, basically, it gives you like an effective hourly price. And
because I think you can cheapen it a bit, don't they? You can say like, oh, I really want this box. I'm renting it out for a month. Like, they know that it's going to exist for a month, so they're going to cheapen it. I don't know if it does. Yeah, I think
you can even do it for like 3 years or something. So I'm actually, I'm going to leave a message for one of the AWS sales guys to, because I'm really looking for some advice on what the best setup is. I know I definitely want a replica database because that just seems really sensible to me. And I think I'm going to need their is it Elasticache service. Again, that seems sensible. So I think it's those three main things I want.
What does Elasticache do then? Is that a query cache, or is it just a key value store?
I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with you. I need to get more clued up on it, but it allows you to store things more efficiently in sort of local memory rather than hitting the database all the time. Is my understanding, but again, that's why I want to speak to one of these AWS guys, make sure I'm getting the right product. So,
and that's another thing actually with the win of a SaaS is you get support, which you won't get if you had your own box, because they'll be like, well, we're just giving you the VPS. We don't care what you put on it. Like, that's your own problem. So it is swings and roundabouts, isn't it? You have to weigh the pros from the cons there of what you're getting, like the pricing and stuff. And I mean, I would say maybe in something, is there a case that you can offload stuff? Like, the RDS system is the most current stuff, but you're able for analytical stuff to be able to bring it off, take it off that system and put it into, say, just a VPS with Postgres that you're able then to query. I don't know whether there's an operation you could do there that would allow you then to cheapen up how much data is actually stored on that box and what needs to be available at that time. Or aggregations as well. Are you able to spend a day processing some data, backing that up, and then only having some aggregate data from that main data? But you can always go back and get that main data, but you only store the aggregates, and you're allowed to then build up from there. I mean, this is the trouble, though. It gets into all these things where the complexity increases.
Yeah, that's it. And I don't want too much of my time to be taken away from actually coding up the program to, hosting and infrastructure, that kind of stuff. But
it's a huge thing, isn't it, though? I mean, once you get into a product like that, you really are spending, if you're doing it on your own as well, you are spending a lot of time on the DevOpsy side and also on the infrastructure side on what you actually need, the puzzle, the pieces to it. You're not just looking at an application as in just a PHP application. You're looking at every little bit, nook and cranny for it, the different bits that combine to create this one application that the person sees. Yeah. Which is a lot of bits, a lot of moving parts.
Yeah. But that's enough about me anyway. What about you? What have you been up to?
I've been up to nothing at all. It
not been trying to buy a house or anything?
No, never. No.
Right.
No, not the. Yeah, it's really, really interesting actually, because like the past couple of weeks have been just kind of surreal, like kind of really like, they've just flown by. And it was really weird thinking, we haven't done a podcast in a while, actually. I mean, I went on holiday, which is always a nice thing. Went to Alaska, which I can't complain about. That was amazing.
That's amazing.
It was insane. And, that was a great experience. And I was sad enough on the plane journeys. I mean, some people read books, some people, watch movies, TV shows. I've just loaded up my little Nexus with a load of YouTube videos, a load of lectures and stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, well this gives me an opportunity time to go through a lot of Sam Newman's lectures and stuff, and a lot of like the Rikiki stuff, and a lot of the like Uncle Bob stuff, and it was just like and it was amazing. Like I literally just went through probably 8 hours of these things on the plane, which was the saddest thing. I'm thinking, this is really sad, Ed, but I enjoyed it, and it's so good. Like sometimes the written word is great, but actually getting them when they're talking, and like when someone's talking and explaining it in that way, you just hear it in a different way. And actually in some regard, like especially with some of the Sam Newman stuff, he would say something in one aspect, in one way, in one of the lectures, and then he would say it again in another, and obviously he'd say it a little bit different, which would allow me to really mold what I perceive his idea is, if that makes sense. Like it allows you to construct, okay, this is what I think he means then more, as opposed to maybe I completely misread what he meant there, or misheard what he meant there. But obviously the Sam Newman stuff goes into what you were talking about, because obviously the microservice stuff. So I have been reading the Building Microservices book from him, and it is a hot topic, and it is a brilliant book, and it is very interesting. It's very pragmatic as well, which I really like, and I really recommend it. I think even if you're not going to look at the microservice architecture in the future, like at this time, even if in the near future, just reading that to understand the concepts of how a bigger system needs to be broken up. And actually, one of the talks I listened to was Eric Evans one. So he's the DDD guy, and he was like, the name of it was microservices. Now we have clear boundaries, because all what he's been essentially not blabbing on about, but preaching for the past since 2003 when it came out, the DDD book is clear boundary contexts is ubiquitous languages between those in those contexts, and how the transfer between them, and how you don't leak out your domain and stuff, and how everything's different, and only when really you bring in microservices, do you have that extreme pain of like, whoa, okay, the only input output I have is a network call. Yeah. I have clear boundaries now. And, you know, I think what's great actually is actually reading if you want to learn DDD, actually reading this Understanding Microservices book is a great idea, because he relates it a lot back to the Eric Evans stuff. And he'll relate it back and you'll be like, okay, this makes complete sense. And it really felt that with me. So yeah, I've been doing that. So that was an amazing experience, the Alaska stuff. And then also me and Amy, on our last meetup with Fraser, he always puts us to shame, doesn't he, really? I mean, you put me to shame, really, with your jogging and stuff last year. You know, you've essentially have done a half marathon. You just did, we did a half marathon, me and Fraser on a Sunday evening. I'm like, wow, you are mental. You know, and then Fraser's like, yeah, well, you know, I'm doing an Ironman. I'm just thinking, damn you, Fraser. Yeah, how the crazy. Hell, you know? And he's doing it in September, and he's just like, you're mental. You're absolutely mental. And speaking to him, and he's like, no, you can do it. And, you know, he's not like, oh no, only I could do this. You know, he is very much like, no, if you put the time in, you can do it. And I was thinking, all right, well, me and Amy have been thinking about what we can do, you know, something. Mm-hmm. We're definitely not going to be doing Ironman. But we thought, what was a realistic goal? And we thought, well, we'll try a half marathon. So we found a really good kind of half marathon guide online, which just says week by week what you really should be doing. And we're kind of just going through that, really. And it's really nice being able to get out and do some jogging. You know, again, away from the keyboard, but it's the same kind of thing. You put in the effort and the time, the hours, the miles, the thing, and then you get some results out, you know, the learning, to me, the exercise and the training is the learning to what you get out, where you're like, oh yeah, I can do that now, or I understand that. But it's been amazing. Yeah. So we've got that in October, beginning of October. We've booked ourselves in for a half marathon. So we're slowly but surely, and I'm trying to convince you to come, but I don't know whether you will be able to. You have a very busy schedule. I know you could do it. I know you could do it in a heartbeat. Yeah,
I think I could. I still have nightmares. The one I did with Fraser was just. I mean, he could have carried on.
Did you hit the wall?
Do you know what? Not fitness wise, but actually physically, my legs. They felt like they've just given up. Like, yeah.
Oh, then when they become weights, it is a horrible feeling.
Yeah.
You just feel like a different person, don't you? You don't feel. You think like, hang on a minute. Half hour ago, I felt like on top of the world, and now I'm feeling this. It's like this can't be the case.
But I remember thinking at the end of it, to do another half marathon now. There's just no way I could do it. I honestly lift my hat to people.
With Fraser. So what combines to be an Ironman is what is it? It's like it's 20. Is it 5 miles swimming?
Yeah,
100 miles bike ride, and then a marathon.
That's crazy.
What the hell, man? Like, what the hell? I mean, any one of those, I would be happy as that's it. Like, that's my achievement for my life would be, I did that. I did a marathon. You know, I did a marathon, I did a bike ride, and I did a swim in one day. Mental. Yeah. But our hat is tip off, obviously, to Fraser, and we are rooting for him. And it'd be good to get him when he gets back on the show, because I know he's been super busy with work and obviously the training, you know, because he is taking it seriously. And I think that's what I admire about him as well, is that he is taking it seriously. So, you know,
the thing is, I'm not one to, drag someone through the dirt, but he does do a lot of illegal substances, and that's got to help.
I mean, all of the stuff with the Russian thing coming on at the moment.
Yeah.
Let's just say, I hope they screen him, you know?
He spends a lot of months in Russia in a year. I mean, we no idea what he does. So,
did you watch completely random again, the UFC card, the 200 card?
No.
Oh, God. The amount of ped stuff going on there was insane.
Really?
Yeah. The main event was like, essentially had to be changed the day before, 2 days before, because the guy, John Jones, I think it is, he tested positive, and then afterwards Brock Lesnar, obviously the wrestling guy, he then turned positive. He was positive, and it's like, wow, these people don't believe they're going to get caught, or they put something in their body that they don't know about. You know, like, wouldn't you, if you were that athlete, make sure everything you touch is to the book? It's just
absolutely. Yeah,
we touched on a lot of areas, and we're also going to now touch on house hunting, because obviously that's the other thing that I've been doing. So house hunting, it's scary. It's hard, it's stressful, and I'm going to leave it at that, really, because that's all that's kind of happening, just hunting for houses.
It's horrible.
Catch a house, you know?
It really is one of the most stressful things you'll ever do in your life, genuinely.
That and debug a complex program written
debug
classic ASP.
Written by me. Yeah.
No, written by me at 1 o'clock in the morning, thinking I'm trying to be clever a couple of years ago, would be what it is. Like, why did you do this, Ed? Why? But no, so moving on to more techie stuff, actually, and slowly moving into the tech stuff. The new GitHub font, have you checked it out?
No.
No, right. So if you go to GitHub and just go on a repo or something, you'll see that they've got a new font. And the guy, I can't remember his exact name, but he posted, we've got a new font and everything. And he's been very good, actually, at talking to people, because obviously you get a lot of FUD where people are like, I hate it, I love it, I don't know about it and stuff. And I'll be honest, I was the same, actually. With this one, I was like, I spend all my days on GitHub. So it becomes very much like a part of you. You're like, well, you've just changed it to me. And I think that is a very much a kind of the way of the times, where before you could say, well, I still have my old product. Like, I have version 2 of it. Version 3 has the new things. I want to stick with version 2. But obviously now with a web product, they update it. You don't get the old version anymore. It's up to them if they provide that for you, that old font. So what actually happened now is I think they're using more of a monospace font. They're using a monospace font, so it's subtly different. And I'm starting to prefer it. And I think it's the whole thing with the whole Facebook changes. People say, I hate it. I can't believe it. I want it to change. But, slowly give it a little time and see how it goes. And to me, it has slowly drawn on me. And I do like it now. But it is funny where I just hear on Twitter, I hate this. It's crazy. Why would you do this to font? It's like, it is just a font. It's not the end of the world. And you can change. It, actually. You like it? Yeah, you see, that's the thing. Like, my instant thing was, but it does make sense to be a monospace font because obviously you're dealing with code. It's not actually a web font. So it's different on different platforms. So on OS X, you're getting San Francisco. On Windows, you're getting George. And then on Linux, you're getting the Ubuntu font. So it's interesting because what they don't want to do is have to make you download a whole new font. Because it does seem a bit of a painstaking thing. I mean, especially for them, how much like actual throughput they get. They want to use a system font, and I can understand that. And it must be hard finding a system font that's similar enough in all of the platforms and available in most of the platforms.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was wondering, what's the object-oriented way to become wealthy?
I'm going to pretend you didn't tell me this. Is it inheritance?
It is! Oh my God, how did you know? That is mental. Absolutely mental. And why did the programmer quit his job?
I don't know. Why did he quit his job?
Because he didn't get a raise. Oh, dear. They're
Shocking.
awful jokes. But why did the Java programmers have to wear glasses? Or why do Java programmers have to wear glasses?
Oh, I don't know. Why couldn't they?
Why? Well, why do they? Because they don't see sharp. They are terrible, aren't they? Oh,
Shocking.
Hang on, this is it. A programmer had a problem. He decided to use Java. He now has a problem factory. This is humour that if I told Amy it, she would just look at me confused. But it cracks us up. It is pretty sad, actually, isn't it? I don't see women as objects. I consider each to be in a class of their own. Anyway, that's enough jokes.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Obviously, I found a page which has got loads of jokes on, and they made me chuckle today. So I thought I'd share with the audience. Oh dear. So what else are you working on at the moment? Is it just full tilt still in the in that project?
Pretty much. Did a little bit of work for big hosting company, but that was small stuff really. So mainly this website. But just really, like I say, when I started the project, I hadn't really worked with Postgres or React or Flux or anything like that before. So it's just been a huge learning curve really. And even like last couple of weeks, I'm still learning a lot about React, and I wasn't using you got me into the habit of using the should component update. And then that was, I managed to get a lot of performance increase with that. And then I realized there was like immutability issues where I was saying, well, if this equals this, then, don't update because we're the same. But then I was having issues, and I found out that really what you need to do is clone an object to make sure that, it's seeing a difference when there is a difference.
That's when the immutable JS library comes in.
Immutable JS, Redux. Is it Redux?
So Redux relies heavily on immutable data structures because it does that thing where it's like, well, if it's not the same thing, I can assume that you've changed it. So the immutable JS library uses what persistent data structures that Clojure uses, and a similar way of doing that. and it allows you to, essentially every time you do an alteration to a list or whatever data structure you use within the immutable JS library, it provides you with a reference to a brand new data structure, but it's shared, so it's not cloning them, so it's not performant. If you would be thinking, I've got a massive array or a massive data structure, are you saying that to add a new thing I need to copy all that? You don't. It shares it, but it does still provide you with that immutable. It's append only, and it's great. Not append only, sorry, it's append only in the fact that the way that the actual data structure works is append only. Internally, so it accommodates for the fact that you can share these data structures. So two data structures can essentially share most of their data. It just so happens that the second one we added something else, and it will be fine. So it's really, really interesting. And especially with things like working out if things have updated, it's such a cheap way of checking now if you do immutable stuff, because you don't have to, you don't care. Like, you don't care that down the line, I mean, this is trouble with objects, where you do a change on an object, it's the same reference, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But you don't know, so you have to do these checks. So, you weigh up the pros and cons of having an immutable data structure, which maybe it's definitely not as performant as having an object data structure from the off, but the comparisons are so much cheaper.
Yeah.
So it's working that out. And you're like, how many more comparisons am I going to do more than I'm going to edit this data structure? And do I care about the memory being maybe a bit more in the data structure? And a lot of the time you don't.
Yeah.
But you found that React performance is an interesting one, because obviously, it's a brand new technology in some regard, and you eventually understand it, you learn it, you're like, I get it, and you're like, it's not performant anymore, or it's slowly degraded, and then you have to work out, should a component update, and you have to be a bit more, that it tries its best to work it out, but giving it these aids and nudging it in the right direction, obviously giving it heuristics.
Yeah, that's true. And I hadn't, it's my fault for not really reading documentation as well as I should have done at the beginning. But you do have to hold it. Well, you don't have to hold his hand a little bit more, but it's certainly in your interest to do so. And I was noticing performance hits by not using that method. So it's live and learn. It's all good.
Absolutely, sir. And can you speak about this big ISP, not ISP, big person, or should I just wipe that out of this podcast?
I don't have to edit it out, but I don't know. I need to read because I did read like an sign NDA. NDA.
Oh, look at you, yeah, professional. NDA. Look at that.
I'm not sure if I meant to or not, but it was just like WordPress work. Really, I've not used WordPress for ages. So
how much do you love it, mate? Yeah. Makes you want to cry, doesn't it?
It's really difficult because on one hand, I really want to slag it off big time. But like building my own application now, like I'm very aware that people could easily slag off my work because there's a lot to slag off about it. But at the same time, you think, well, I've done my best with what I knew at the time, and really the WordPress developers were the same.
Yeah,
right?
the code base. I just think it's become stagnated, hasn't it? And I think the only way of changing it is to rewrite the whole thing, and then it's weighing up, well, is it worth a rewrite? And I think stuff like Joomla, I know they went with a full rewrite, and I think Drupal did as well and stuff. But I could be wrong there. I'm not 100% on that. But I know Joomla specifically did. So whether WordPress should is a whole other thing, and it is a lot of work and a lot of time. And will they see any value out of it? Like their user base is really kind of hackers in some regard.
Yeah,
not trying to belittle it, but they want to tweak together, they want to get a couple of plugins, maybe they want to hack some plugins together and make things work together. They're more of a build up what you want thing, as opposed to a bespoke option where you start from the base and you get exactly what you want. 100%. WordPress is going to give you what you can kind of get from other bits.
And in that regard, it is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, because the ecosystem actually is quite rich, isn't it? Because of how many people have used it in the past and how much, for you, I know that you said like a lot of it was, a lot of things like templating and things like that, is there a lot of stuff online for good practices with WordPress? Or is it very much you just have to do, what you feel deemed best? And that maybe that may be why, it's gone down this road where everyone just does what they want with it.
There is, but again, I think it comes down to the point that you really kind of hit on it, which is, part of its beauty is its extendability, and the rich community is out there, and all the templates, all the plugins, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, those templates, plugins, they're not checked by anyone, so anyone can upload anything. So then, like, the plugin that I was brought in to do some work on, I was brought in because they're having so many issues with it. I was like, oh, this doesn't work. Can you fix it? And then you've got to be really careful that you're not, making changes to files that are just going to be overwritten as soon as you update the plugin. So, you can see a very clear difference between a plugin that's been written really well and one that's not. And the ones that have been written really well, they give you that ability to overwrite certain parts without the worry of it being overwritten when you upgrade.
It's good design. They've done good design principles, and they've worked out exactly what the actual user will want.
Yeah.
As opposed to just hacking it together.
There's a lot of plugin developers who are just there to make a quick buck. Throw something out there that looks okay as soon as you install it, and then good luck.
Yeah.
So, I have to say the one I was using, to be fair, it did have a good sort of support system and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, with my developer hat on, of course, I really want to slag it off. But, as someone who's, looking at the clients and thinking, oh, this is what they needed, this is what they wanted, it needed in this amount of time, it is really, really good for that respect, really.
Because obviously now you're doing your freelance stuff, would you recommend WordPress from a clean slate?
No, I would never, ever recommend WordPress.
It would have to be, it's already there, you just have to suck it up and deal with it, Well, that's my kind of feeling about it too. Like, if it's there, it's there. It's legacy code to me. Like, it's...
I guess I would recommend it to someone who's like, you know what, I've got a B&B, I've got a little, really, really small business. I don't need any e-commerce, don't need anything like that. I just want a brochure site, 2 pages. That, it's not a bad solution, is it really? You can get I suppose,
quick. To allow them to do that, that's true. Yeah. I do love going on pet web. Like, that's another thing, actually. So, obviously now the house hunting, right? I've been obviously very much very familiar now I am with Rightmove, Zoopla's, Prime Location, all these different websites and all the different UIs and stuff like that. And it's very, obviously being a geek, it's quite fun looking at all the different UIs and being like, oh, that's just bad user experience and stuff, like, like thinking and really, I think also like the web, like their actual apps and stuff as well, and how they work and how they interact. Like, this is an awful app and one of them's a good app. And I think Rightmove have actually done really well. Zoopla's not bad, but it's not as good. They haven't cared as much for their app as Rightmove do.
And I bet any money, the good ones, they have in-house development teams. Whereas
guaranteed,
the bad ones,
I'm sure. I think that's it, isn't it? And I think it's very easy to... And that's funny because obviously a couple of months ago, Lou's talking about, obviously he's been interacting with these APIs and we had, Matt on about it and stuff. And like, obviously then I was just thinking, oh yeah, we may be looking for a house sometime, and it kind of sparked something. It has now been like, I now know Zoopla. I understand Zoopla and I understand but... I obviously don't. I mean, it's very interesting because obviously all these estate agents then hook in and integrate and say, oh, we are affiliated with Zoopla or these things. So they have to interact. And that is a hard problem to solve. Having all these different places be able to generalize a format that is then deliverable to multiple different, like Rightmoves, the Zooplas. I mean, they don't agree on formats. They don't care about the other person. In fact, they probably don't want you to use the other person's. They want it only on their site. And I don't know what the fee structures are for like being open. Obviously they have to pay to be displayed on that site. So I'm intrigued by that. That's quite an interesting little thing. But no, so completely tangent.
But it is also a good point where APIs are so good is that, and again, it kind of links into the microservices talk we were talking about before, is that who cares how the API is made as long as you've got those endpoints. So Zoopla, all they want to know is, how do I get a listing of all your properties?
That's it. What's your API and can I use it?
And make sure you provide me with this, and then they'll do the rest. So
that is the whole. I mean, that's the one thing. So Sam Newman with microservices, talking about service-oriented architecture (SOA), and really he describes that microservices as a more strict, defined way of doing SOA. And it's true. It is true, because the term SOA has just become so vague that, I mean, really kind of like in anything, really, like developer is quite a vague term. Like we can call a WordPress developer, you can call, us a developer, like I suppose that kind of thing where what do you constitute to be something? Where microservices like a new term, people are like, oh, why are you using a new term for something that's already exists? And it's true. Some people have already been doing SOA in the microservices way, but a lot haven't. You know, and I think that's the beautiful thing. And the to me, like, and I'll put it in the show notes, all his talks, but like the way that he's able to describe like what a microservice should do, and like the way that it should be autonomous and it should be deployable on its own, is such a powerful thing. And he mentions it a lot there, that is the crux. Can I deploy this without anything else having to change? You know, can I deploy this service, whether it be, you know, a fundamental, like, and handle the fact that obviously other services may still need to be using old versions of me, or how do I deal with that? And it becomes a whole different ball game. But that's the autonomy of it, because that allows that to live in its own ecosystem. And that's where we obviously with code, and especially like with monoliths and things, I mean, monoliths are great in some regard. Like, you can't have a go at a monolith in some regard, because I can do a change to multiple areas, and I can just deploy it, and you can see it in a commit log. Like, unless you're breaking up your, you know, your Git repos into certain repos and stuff, and then you're separating history. If you've got a clear history of the whole thing, and you've got it all shared into one monolith, you're like, okay, well, I can see that you changed that and you changed that, and you know, technically they're two different boundaries you're changing it in. Okay, but you did it in one change, one autonomous change, boom, one atomic change. Sorry, you do a deploy, deploys everything again. A lot of the stuff you've just deployed, you shouldn't have had to redeploy, because it's not changed. You know, if you're looking at it in the clear boundaries, and you're like, well, you have split them up, and you could have got away with that. But obviously, because it's a monolith, you just have to deploy everything again. But you get away from the fact of having to think, well, I have to deal with the like what you'd have to do with these changes is add into these areas. You'd either have to run a whole separate version of the old version, so you can do that change, or you have that you integrate that change into the wild first with the ability to fall back to the old way of doing things if they need it with versioning and stuff. Or you do them both at the same time, but then you're then violating the autonomy, because you're saying that these two have to be deployed together. Blows your mind. Blows my mind.
It does. I mean, I love that book, and I think the thing is, I would never treat it like a development Bible. You know, like I'm very wary of buzz terms as much as the next guy. And to be honest, even things like when people say, "Oh, I love agile," I was like, well, what is agile?
Yeah, exactly. So please just define agile to me. And that's another thing. The Uncle Bob talks I've done, he speaks about like the Agile Manifesto, and like, you know, when they made it and stuff, and how diluted it's become, the term. And Scrum Masters and all this stuff. And it's like, well, you've just taken bits of it. Yeah,
and I don't think that's a good thing, actually. But I'm always contradicting myself, but in the same way, the Sam Newman book, I do, I read bits, think, yeah, that's right, that's true, that's good, I'll take that. And I just take away some of the philosophy of it, because, like you say, microservices has probably been done for a long, long time. It's just someone's now branded it. And
also there's a lot of implementation details about it. Like, you need to know the philosophy of a problem. Like, like understanding OO, the concept of OO is fine. The actual implementation of it is very much different. Like, you need to understand what the concept of what OO is, what the pros are, why it's there, polymorphism, why is that great, as opposed to knowing I just understand how it works in, say, PHP, but I don't understand, grasp exactly what OO is. If you understand the term, and that's, as you say, like microservices, but he is quite good at giving you more concrete stuff as well, like real world examples of how he's used it. And I think that's great about it. So he gives you the philosophy, gives you more of that, the higher level stuff. He does dip into his toes into it a bit, with talking about Docker and all these things. But obviously that's going to change over time. And it really shows, that you really want to have a book and have an idea. I mean, the reason why the DDD book's been around since 2003, and it's still remaining as it is because it was very much about philosophy stuff as opposed to real practical, how do I do ASP.NET 3.5? Because that book, once 4's out, who needs 3.5 version? So you have to, I like these books. I love books like that are timeless in some regard, or at least last longer than a normal book does. Deploy, programming language book, or a feature book for something, and you go online and you interact and you work with the implementation details. But so for as a philosophy book, I do agree. It's a really great book to read.
And I think, like you say, I mean, you don't have to be a really amazingly technical-minded developer to read the book. You could be a pretty beginner developer and just get some of the concepts and take that away.
I think you would learn a lot from just generally. I mean, it really is expanding on, single responsibility and all these separation concerns, and the deployability is Yeah, I think, it opens up these areas and talks about them, in a very clever way. And it really does kind of separate problems.
I think for me, like one of my biggest fears with like doing this project, my first sort of, big project by myself was, I was really scared of building a monolith that would just become a nightmare, and I would just
a hodgepodge of all the different bits and all the different domains, and thinking like, really that, but a user in this context is different from that. But because obviously I've got this user class that I use everywhere, it's just this God class now. And absolutely. And I think thinking of it in terms of a system makes it so much easier. Like, no, in this system, this whole system uses this, and in this whole system uses this. But the trouble is, obviously, the DDD stuff, you kind of actually meld it into the same project. And I mean, he does mention, obviously, you start off with, say, packages, and you use the language constructs that you have to be able to differentiate between modules and things like that. And you can break it up that way, and it's a lot cheaper to break it up that way, and until you eventually find the real microservices out of it that you can deploy. But, it's hard sometimes, because I remember it was very hard for me to grasp the fact that I've got two users though. Like, what makes no sense? Like, they're both users. They're just in different packages. Like, what? Like, why don't we just have one user? This is the application. It's like, no, because they're different contexts and they're different ways of thinking, and it's a different domain that you're in between these. And I know you can't share between those, even though it's possible. You can't, because that is a domain entity. That's a domain concept value. You can't share the inners of that domain. And people will be saying that to me, and I'll be like, but it's right there. I can access it though. Like, it's okay to, isn't it? No. But in an object, in a service, you really can't. It's a whole different code base. Like, you have to really break in and access it, and it's not possible. So it is a great way of thinking.
Yeah.
But what obviously with it, and there's one thing I've been rambling on, but like one thing I would love to talk about is logging. And one thing he does mention, obviously, is that with a monolith, you have a problem, you SSH into the box, you do a top, you work out the logs.
Yeah.
And typically, in a monolith, you're going to have maybe a simple architecture. Maybe it's just an Apache box running PHP, and that's it, and a database. So there's a couple of areas that could go wrong there. There's the database could be slow, and there's, obviously Apache and PHP failing. So you've got all those logs. Great, but then obviously when you go into microservices, they become their own separate entities, and it's working out exactly where the problem actually is happening. Yeah. But a request now is trickling through all these different places. Like, to do one request on a monolith would just be hitting that box, hitting that instance of that service, boom, done, return, easy. Okay, I can look at the trace on that one box, it's done. Easy peasy. But now you're obviously maybe doing like 4 or 5 different microservice calls. Again, performance, but we could talk about that another time, like around that. But like you may be hitting like 4 or 5 different microservices. Where did the problem go? And which ones correlate to which? And that's when things like correlation IDs happen, really are important, and unique IDs. So that's one thing actually, a while back actually, before I went on holiday, I actually was working on our architecture. So we do run somewhat of a monolith. The monolith application is stored in a monolith repository, but there are separate applications within it. So you have the APIs, and then you actually have certain applications, front-end applications that are just Symfony 2 apps. I mean, in some regard, actually, all of them are Symfony 2 apps, but it doesn't really matter. Like, there is no real concern. It's just these are separate entities. Now, obviously, being a monolith, it allows us to do changes between them, which gives a very nice thing, but obviously we have to deploy. I mean, one of the funny things is, obviously, I deploy a change to the API, but I'm also updating and bumping up the versions of the assets because I've done an update, I've done a deploy. That doesn't make sense, does it? Like, they're not going to, why am I making them download a whole brand new asset version? Because the version's technically changed, but it hasn't really, because that application itself hasn't changed.
Yeah.
But we have quite a complex, well, I'd say, quite complex actually routing through. So we have Nginx for SSL termination. We then have Varnish. Varnish will then decide whether it needs to go, well, obviously it's the cache layer. So it'll say, can I get this? Have I already got this requested as an asset? Is it something like is cacheable? Go back, give it back to them. Else, it will decide, okay, is this an API call? Goes to APIs, it then goes to Kong. We spoke about Kong last year, and I'll put a link into the show notes of the Kong podcast we did. And once it goes to Kong, it then goes to the API endpoints. So it goes to then to Apache, which we use currently for handling PHP. So it says, all right, those, or it goes from the Varnish down to the applications. Now, the applications themselves, say admin and marketplace, they can interact with the API. So again, it goes through and it goes round again. So it's quite complex. And what we did, was we used a new service. We used Logly. So we've moved all our logs. So we've got quite a lot of different things. We've got you think there, you've got Nginx logs, Varnish logs, Apache logs, for each of the different things, APIs, different applications, all have separate logs for them. You then have PHP logs, obviously, for each one of them. You then have Kong logs. You have Postgres logs. We have Cassandra installed because of Kong at the moment. So Cassandra logs. And you're like, oh my days, like, how do you deal with this? Like, I want to know a request. So I say a request, like, well, I want to know what happened with that request. Like, one of the requests that we do is opening up the Leads application. And in turn, opening up the Leads application, we need to call the API, the Lead API. And so what we did was we did an optimization where we actually internally call the API, the Lead API, internally, get the bootstrap file and inject it into the page with it. So they didn't have to do just that request for no reason.
Yeah.
But that technically is part of the same request that first came in. So what we've had to do is we've got Nginx request ID is generated in Nginx. In newer versions of Nginx, it actually gives you a request ID, but in our one we just had to use like kind of an amalgamation of a couple of bits that would make it unique enough. So it comes in, right, as a request ID. It then passes through Varnish. Obviously, every log now has this request ID. Passes through there. It goes through and filters through all the application. It even filters through to the Postgres queries. So if there's a slow query, we actually store with it as the name of the query, like with the Postgres system, the actual request ID. Yeah. So we can make sure that we can track the whole way through. So in theory, what we can do is we can say, oh, problem happened with this. New Relic knows about them as well. So New Relic will maybe throw an exception or whatever happens there. I mean, we know it in Logly now as well. Okay, fine, get that request ID, put it in, search for it. We now have the whole trace of how long it took and which part of the application it failed on, or maybe it had a problem. I mean, it may fail on Varnish, or it may have failed when it got to Kong, but we don't know in some regard if we don't have this tracking, if we don't have this traceability. And that really was like, oh yeah, when I looked at the microservice, I was like, we're doing that as well. We have to do that as well because of how the complex some of the application specific parts are.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. Like, I really love correlation IDs. I think they're a very valuable thing. Passing around a token saying, I am part of this.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
It took a little while. It really did. Like, it was one of those things where working out logs, syslogs, and working out formats and Logly and storing stuff in JSON. So one beautiful thing, people love JSON and Logly loves it because it actually stores it it displays it and is able to query it very effectively. Because under the hood, it's using Elasticsearch and it's using like the whole elk thing.
Yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to do, but we didn't have really much time to do it, was to actually set up our own elk, like the Elasticsearch, Logstash and Kibana. And each one, so Elasticsearch is what you store your data in, so it stores all the documents, document store. It's a very effective document store to search things from. You then have Logstash, which is able to manipulate data logs. So you'll get log comes in. I mean, one of the problems with us was Postgres essentially when it had a log, a query could span multiple lines because obviously you have new lines in it. But the way it would actually say, I only want one log. So say I want a select query could be in multiple lines, but it obviously then would not join them all together into one log format. It would have this like kind of weird thing where it say, oh yeah, I'm that message ID 1, but I'm part 1 of it, and I'm part 2 of it, and I'm part 3. And looking at it, you just couldn't easily look at it. Things like Logstash, you can easily join those all together and put it into the format you want. But we got around it with Logly, but it would have been nicer to do that. So with JSON is great because if you store it in JSON, then it's got some context to it all the time. But JSON is a much bigger format to store, and a lot of duplicate information's been stored.
Yeah.
So you have to weigh up the pros and cons. Like, we've gone with like Apache log format a lot because obviously that's a very good standard to have, the NCSA standard. But in some cases, we're actually, with the request ID stuff, we're actually storing some bits in JSON because we want some more context in there and be able to break it up. But it is very fun and it is very effective being able to search for these Logly stuff. I mean, when you're implementing it and you're like, okay, phew, I've actually implemented it, I've been able to actually solve it, and you're like, will it actually make a difference? And I do feel that actually having these correlation IDs is making a difference because it's allowing us to see the full story of a request, which we used to be able to do when it was a simpler system. But obviously, the minute you add layers, you're adding layers, you're just complexing it more because you don't know where it broke.
It's true. I mean, the Michael Budd approach would be to have a different channel on your Slack room and then just send the logs to each.
Hey, That's a feedback loop. I mean, at the moment, when you're in beta, essentially, if not alpha, really, you need that feedback loop. And only a couple of people. I mean, if you can handle that, that's great. Like that's a good way of doing it. I mean, it's when you get to bigger, obviously, when you go to live, that you need to be able to correlate. You want feedback, and you want real feedback. And false positives are a devil, because obviously you start then becoming susceptible to ignoring feedback. So you're like, oh, but it's just one of those, ones that always fails. It's not really, you're seeing red. If you see too much red, you just become used to red. But if it becomes a case where you're like, no, this is serious. If it's red, it means danger. It means we really care about looking at it. I think it's just a psychological thing, isn't it, really? But I mean, at this time, you're dinging. It means it's important. It means that there's something there, and it's a manageable amount. It's only when you get into, so obviously you get Loggly for looking after the fact at data, but then we have Datadog, which provides health on the current system, because we want to know, obviously, if Postgres is having a problem or something like that. You're like, okay, well, why is Postgres going crazy? Or why is Apache going crazy? Or why is that down? Why is that taking that too long to respond? That gives us indications to alert us, all right, we need to start looking, there may be a problem. And then that obviously means we can go look in the Loggly stuff and get more feedback and more intricate details on the problem.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, in an ideal world, just don't have any errors in your application.
Well, and also don't need to just do it right first time. Is really what we preach on this show.
It really is. If
you don't do it right first time, don't use Git. You don't need it. Version control. Well, you should have done it right the first time. Completely agree. Preach, man, preach.
Yeah.
Is there anything else, mate, you want to talk about on this show? I think I've completely again sidetracked onto a load of random little bits.
Well, we've discussed buying houses, React, Flux, immutability, jogging,
logging,
microservices. Logging. To be honest, it's pretty end of the podcast.
Exactly. I think we've summed up every topic.
Got it all.
We've spoken about every topic possible in the world. I like it. Just
listen to this one episode and you're done.
You're done. I think we said that last time. I think we said, I swear it was you've listened to the best, we said we've listened to the best podcast. You're never going to get anything better than this from us now. Don't listen to it anymore.
Then this came along.
Then this came along. Ooh, I like it.
Now we look stupid.
I like
it.
Again. We do. Until the next time.
Yeah.
Until the next time we look stupid. Audience, it's been great talking to you. It's been another great show. There we go. I've said it. Done the bit at the end.
Cheers.
All right then, guys. Speak to you next week.
Cheers.
Bye.
You've been listening to 3 Devs and a Maybe. You can contact us at contact@3devsandamaybe.com or follow us on Twitter at 3 Devs and a Maybe.